also at Will Critchlow, or the SearchPilot YouTube channel, which is at SearchPilot on YouTube. And yeah, I've got a few things for you today. Just checking that we're successfully up and running. Yeah, I think we are. Okay, great. Yeah, a few things for you today. We're going to talk about link tests for SEO, internal links in general, and the challenges of really understanding what's going on with linking algorithms, more widely how search engines think about links. And this is a topic that I've thought about for many years, and I've got all kinds of complicated thoughts. So we'll get into that. Before we do that, we're going to talk a little bit about some news and some thoughts that I've got on some of the news that's been coming out in the last few days. And if you stick around, I've got some breaking news on the SearchPilot side, as well as some sneak peeks into things we're working on, some bits of research and development that we're doing, and behind the scenes in, yes, I think some quite interesting findings that I've been quite surprised by, to be honest, particularly around Google's treatment of JavaScript and how it's rendering different styles of JavaScript. So we will get onto all of that. But yeah, first of all, let's talk about some news. So let's share my screen. Cool. Yeah, so the first thing I was going to talk about was this news that Google has promoted Liz Reed to head of search. And this is, so Pandu is moving, it seems, to chief scientist role. And Liz is going to be heading up search in general. I don't know Liz's work particularly well. I don't know exactly what she has specialized in, except been reading a little bit about it since this news came out, which yeah, I saw this morning, but I guess came out yesterday. And there's a little bit here in the Search Engine Land article about Liz's experience, what she's worked on in the past. So there's obviously some AI in the mix, and worked in local, in maps. But I think there's a few things that I pulled out that I thought were particularly interesting. So this work to make authentic voices more accessible, perspective filters, which is I think interesting in different people have different searchers have different needs in these kind of areas. So the AI experience, the authentic human voices, the perspective filter, all of this makes me wonder if this appointment has an eye on the political challenges facing Google in the future, in search specifically. So Google has a number of big issues that it's going to have to face, not least the antitrust questions, which we'll come on to actually. The other big story I want to talk about overlaps with that. But one of the challenges that I think Google faces in a move to more artificial intelligence is when you have, I think, pure search, by which I mean old-fashioned 10 blue links search, is generally seen as relatively apolitical. I think for the most part, Google doesn't get the blame for what websites on the internet say. And surfacing those websites is seen as reasonably neutral. And this has been true even in fairly controversial areas. If you search for the darker things on the internet, you can often find them. I remember some controversy around the different searches around different directions of phrasing things. So is the Holocaust a hoax? Did the Holocaust happen? Different kinds of positive and negative phrasings of essentially the same query, returning different results. But where they got most into trouble is when the further they get away from just saying, well, here's a list of websites on which you can read what they think. So pulling information into the search results, the one box, is a classic area where this has been troublesome, and they've had the imperative, I think, internally driven mainly, to present both sides of many questions. They always present it obviously with fairly anodyne examples. I remember one example was the query, do lizards make good pets? And obviously you can find both perspectives on the internet. You can find people saying yes and people saying no. And that was a classic example where they had a almost a disambiguation one box in one of their examples, where one answer presented the case for yes and one answer presented the case for no. There are many areas where both sides is not what anyone wants. Unfortunately, people can't agree on the one thing they want is, and so that's caused some challenges. We've seen challenges with bias, particularly racism and sexism, especially in image search. I think that's an area that has been quite contentious over the years. And the more that we get into generative, the more that we get. Well, I mean, we've seen it just recently with Google themselves. They released the powerful Gemini model, and very quickly had to disable its image generation capabilities, particularly of humans, after it was found to be an odd kind of attempting to be woke, I guess. I think we talked about this previously, but getting some very odd results, either historical results, potentially difficult, challenging results, or just not useful in a variety of ways. But particularly, I think where it edges into the political realm is there are obviously times when certain kinds of nudging the status quo are valuable and good, and you can direct the conversation in a good direction. There are certain times where you need it if you're Google and you're global, and your user base might have different misconceptions, or different conceptions, different stereotypes, even different experiences, and might want and need different things. And I think that's where it gets difficult, is if you're going to present just one answer. And it's one of the many reasons why I'm not as bullish on SGE as some folks are. I think search is a different thing to conversation and answers. But anyway, my point being, it seems like Reed has experience with these kinds of challenges. Both of these experiences speak to the difficulty of understanding different global needs and the political minefield that can come with that. And certainly there's going to be no shortage of those kinds of challenges facing Google search in the future. So I'm quite interested to see where this goes, and look forward to whatever cool new features are coming as a result. Just briefly I think that there is some potential for knowing more about us to be part of the solution to this problem. More customization, personalization, more follow-up prompts. So finding out, do you want the historical answer to this question? Do you want the idealized answer to this question? What are your perspectives and views? That obviously opens up a whole world of potential filter bubbles and reinforcement of stereotypes and so forth. And maybe the people who most need their horizons expanding are going to be the ones who least select the option to expand their horizons. But anyway, we'll see where all of that goes. I personally have been struggling with it just more on the, I don't know if it's political correctness, or I guess it's just AI safety that has potentially, I find it potentially constraining. I feel like I want to be a power user of these things, and I want them to do what I ask, and then I'll back away from that and figure out if I'm asking for things that I wish I hadn't. But I've been struggling. I've been trying. There've been a few things recently where I felt like Google search as a search engine isn't exactly what I want. I don't want to find a website about a thing. I want actually the kind of summarization and the kind of perspective that a large language model can give. And yet they've been refusing to answer the kind of queries that I had. So we'll see how that all comes together over time. The other bit of news that I wanted to talk about was this news that Google apparently is in active talks with Apple to bring Gemini and their AI and large language models to the iPhone. So this is very similar to the deal that they have to power web search on the iPhone. And I mentioned before the antitrust potential challenges that could be increasingly on Google's horizon, which is has a nod to that in this story, where talks about the search deal has been under focus from the regulators, and I'm kind of amazed really that the regulators allowed the Microsoft OpenAI deal to, that's exactly the kind of leveraging of market power in one area into another. I'm no expert, but whatever. Anyway, that's been allowed. Here, where we're talking two dominant powers, so we're not talking a startup and an established company. We're talking about Apple and Google, two of the biggest companies in the world, doing a deal to potentially entrench Google's AI in the market-leading hardware. It's going to be very interesting to watch. And I've been slightly curious actually about. So I thought we were going to see it first in the Google voice recognition stuff. So Google Home in particular. I don't know how many of you will use Google Home, but I have one in the kitchen. I mainly use it for setting timers and adding things to shopping lists and those kinds of things. And what the thing that I feel like I'm amazed Google hasn't come out with already is not improving the voice recognition, which is fine. I'm sure they will enhance that in the fullness of time. But the fact that you have to get that incantation exactly right to get it to do the thing you wanted it to do. So, turn off the lights or add to shopping list or those kind of things. You have to say it right. I feel like there's an immediate drop in that I would be testing if I were in that product team of just saying, well, what if we just ran it through Gemini as an interim stage? So not try and have Gemini answer everything, but just say, before we pass it to the algorithm we've already got to perform the action or answer the user's query, run it through Gemini first to phrase it in a way that Google Home will understand. And that would just allow us to be much more natural language in how we control these things. And feels like it should be a win. So I'm surprised we haven't seen that. But anyway, this on the iPhone, it's going to be interesting. If this deal happens, it mentions that Apple has also considered using ChatGPT. I don't know if one is just a stalking horse for the other, or how much money could be changing hands here. But this could be material, I think, to both organizations. Okay, not exactly news, but the other thing I wanted to mention was I got a cool bit of mail. So my friend Ross Simmons sent me his book, Create Once, Distribute Forever. Ross is at the coolest cool on Twitter, and you can follow him along for his advice on content distribution in particular, which is what this book is all about. And I'm definitely looking forward to checking that out because it is something that I feel like I've underperformed at. I churn out all this stuff and I don't do enough distribution, to be honest, of our content. So definitely interested in taking some of Ross's advice. Okay, but the main thing that I said I was going to talk about today is about links, and in particular, internal links, but that's particularly because those are the ones that are fully in our control as webmasters, as web marketers. And we should remember why links are important in this context is that they're the kind of the fabric of the web. Going all the way back to the whole point of hypertext is that you can embed links, and they've been part of the web since the very beginning. And Google's big breakthrough obviously was the original PageRank algorithm, and the realization that if you take into account the linking architecture, the graph of links on the whole web, that you could create a radically better search engine than anything that had come before. And obviously since then, there've been a lot of enhancements and improvements to how links are viewed and thought of. And I think we don't know all of them, right? We get glimpses of this from information retrieval, conferences, papers, academic research, and we see things coming out around Hilltop, local domains, all kinds of different elements of ways that this can have got more complex. But the reason I called this disentangling internal linking is I think even if you just think about the most basic kind of link algorithms going all the way back to the 90s and PageRank, they're not easy things to have intuition about. And it's an area where I think testing is needed as much as anywhere on when it comes to SEO, because we just can't have great intuition about this. So I thought I'd just talk about that for a little minute. Before I get into that, don't forget you can go to searchpilot.com/live for resources related to all kinds of things that I'm talking about here, and I'll tweet out the links to the specific things I've talked about today. But in general, at searchpilot.com/live, you can get customer success stories, so stories about folks who are using SEO testing effectively in the wild, as it were. You can get some information on what SEO testing is and how it works, which is crucial foundational information to get the most out of the things I'm talking about in these weekly live streams. There's also the chance to sign up to our test result email list. This is the email list that I wish had existed when I was an SEO consultant. So you get the results of an SEO test in your inbox every week. And there's also a demo request form. So if you would like to see SearchPilot in action and discuss potentially using it to run SEO tests for your site, that is the place that you can do that. And yeah, I'd encourage you to head on over to searchpilot.com/live to do those things. So let's talk a little bit about internal links and internal link tests in particular. So why do we need to run internal linking tests? Well, I've already hinted at this a little bit, but fundamentally it's because we don't really understand link algorithms, even if we knew exactly what the algorithm was that Google is using these days, which for clarity, we don't. But even if it was still just PageRank, our intuition for this stuff is poor. I'm not going to go through the whole worked example here. I've tweeted about this in the past, but even if you imagine this tiny model website of just 4 pages with just whatever it is, 5 links on it, and then you add another link and you try to get the intuition of what that's going to do to the page rank, most of us get this wrong. So even on a theoretical basis, we don't really know what link changes are going to do, even in kind of model scenarios. And there aren't really great tools to help us do this. My experience of SEO tools link analysis capabilities is that they are not very explanatory and they aren't very useful for figuring out what changes will do. So this is a visualization from one of the crawling tools. The crawling tools are quite useful for literally, for things like finding broken links, finding pages that have no links to them, finding other kind of outliers that you might want to debug or diagnose, but they're quite static. They don't really tell you what a good change would be to remedy situations if you've got a disjoint subset or anything like that. And on the other side, you've got tools like, I came up through the industry with the Moz tools and MozRank and so forth, but obviously there are now others. Ahrefs comes to mind, for example, and their domain strength and page strength features. Or again, quite static analysis. They'll tell you how it works right now, how they think things will be viewed as they stand, but they don't have the dynamic part. They don't tell you what to change, what would happen if you do make a certain change, or how to think about the benefits of different approaches. And so this is why I think we need to run tests. You essentially, whenever you have that kind of impenetrable apparatus, you need to run some kind of scientific process to figure out how it's going to work and how to get the most out of it. The problem, as my slide says, is unfortunately internal linking tests are hard. So let's talk about why that is for a second. So again, consider a really simple website that looks like this with links out from each of these pages. And we're considering adding a link into the HTML of the purple page. So that would go to another page like that. And we want to know, is this a good idea or not? Now, the challenge when compared to normal SEO testing is that typically when we change a page, the purple page in this case, that is the page that we would expect to see perform differently. You add structured data to a page, you change the title, you modify the content, you remove a piece of content. That page is going to rank better or worse, typically. And that's most of our kind of classic SEO testing is focused on trying to understand, debug, and quantify those changes, those pros and cons. The challenge here is when you add this link in, we can see results on the purple page or on the page that we're linking to, the pink page, and potentially even other pages that were already linked to by the page that we've changed. And the crazy thing is potentially even wider than that because it's an iterative algorithm. So all of the pages that any of those pages link to might even be affected, including in a big circle all the way back to the beginning. So that's the challenge. The approach that we take at SearchPilot to handle this is that we run basically 2 different kinds of internal linking tests. The first is where we randomize the link sources and destinations. So the source is the page into whose HTML you're adding the new link. And the destination is the page that you go to when you click on that link, essentially. And so sometimes you randomize both. So a good example of that would be on a media site deciding we're trying to test the hypothesis that we should move from 2 to 4 related articles on each article. So here, every article is potentially a source and a destination page for these kinds of things, right? Articles have related articles on them, and articles obviously are related articles to other articles. So we'd randomize both sides of this. The other kind is where we randomize the link destinations only. And this is something where, so an example of this would be nearest neighbor type stuff. So we've run tests where we want to experiment with how, when you've got a geographically oriented site, how close should neighbors count to get that nearby locations link. And obviously that can be dynamic, but here, every page in the site section was a recipient of new links, but only some pages were getting the, other way around. All pages in the site section had these nearby locations widgets added, but we held back some pages and didn't include them in any other pages nearby locations widget. And so, yeah, you've got these different kinds of tests. And then the analysis that we run considers both the regular site section, so that's the pages that we've changed. Those are the pages that are sources that are getting new links added to their HTML. And then we also have a measurement section separately, which is the set of pages that are the destinations of new links. And there's more information. I'll again tweet this link out, but it's links to a blog post that goes into a great deal of detail of everything we're talking about here, these experiments that I was talking about, but particularly how to actually run these different kinds of links. And then, possibly most usefully to many of you, some examples of different internal linking tests, linking each of these to specific test results on our website, where you can read about the results of them as well. But fundamentally, we're measuring the effect on the source pages, the effect on the destination pages, and potentially the effect on other pages on the site. And then we can combine that, roll that up into a net effect across the whole site. And yeah, so anyway, the point being, these tests are more complicated to measure. They're also more complicated to build, but fundamentally they operate in a very similar way to the way that we run all of our SEO tests, where we have a control group and a variant group, and there's randomizing going on. So in all these cases, we're using what we call salt shaking to select good randomizations, good splits of the control and variant groups of pages. And that's a kind of key feature within SearchPilot. And I'm not going to go deep into them just now, but I'll link to the presentation on Twitter later, and you can follow along and see the effects that the results we've seen for a variety of internal linking tests. This was an 11% increase in organic traffic with new related links, expanding related category links, 5% increase, and yeah, many more on the website as well. So I hope you find some of those valuable. And as I say, this article covers everything I've talked about today, as well as going way deeper into more detail of how to actually run these things and how to measure them. So thought I'd also cover, I mentioned at the beginning, a few different things. One of the benefits, I think, of joining these live stream calls is that I'm live. So I end up going off script sometimes, talking about all kinds of things that we have going on, hopefully not saying anything too far beyond what I should say. And most things are sanctioned by the team here at SearchPilot. But basically, one of the benefits of joining these calls is occasionally I get to talk about things that we haven't fully announced anywhere else yet. And so I've got a few of those for you this week. Firstly, we signed a major new customer last week. We don't always get publicity and PR rights when we sign a new customer, but this time we have. And so watch out for that announcement coming soon. That's an exciting one. That's mainly, I'm excited. I don't expect you to be excited, but I'm excited about that one. And we'll look forward to celebrating that and getting a brand new logo on the SearchPilot website. And it's a good one. Secondly, I like to give some glimpses into things that we're thinking about or considering working on. Figuring really that serendipity might do its job. One of you might have been thinking about similar things. You might have an interesting insight that we can share and trade. It'll make us stronger, make you stronger. And so please do reach out if any of this triggers a little kind of like light bulb moment to say, hey, we've been working on something similar there as well. But I figure if we talk about some of the most cutting edge things we're thinking about, then hopefully that'll come back to us. It'll trigger some additional ideas or insights for other folks to share back with us. So yeah, a couple of areas. We've got some interesting research and development going on at the moment. Firstly, we've been working on comparing different ways of tracking Googlebot visits. So because we deploy server-side, we, for many of our customers, get to see every Googlebot hit because we see every request for the HTML on their site. So we track through our regular proxy technology. The limitations of that are that some of our customers have edge caching outside us. So their CDN caches the HTML, which means we don't necessarily see every request. We see some subset, some breakdown of those requests. And so in those cases, we've been experimenting with tracking with edge worker technology that can monitor Googlebot requests fully, no matter, even if there's edge caching going on. But the interesting thing is that we've also been playing around with using Googlebot's ability to execute JavaScript to implement Googlebot tracking that way as well. And the interesting thing here is not so much for us, actually, because we have these other ways of doing it, whether it's edge workers or proxy layer. But more broadly applicable, what we've seen is that the JavaScript tracker is recording only a fraction of the hits and not even recording a single Googlebot hit on many pages, even ones that we know have been JavaScript rendered by Googlebot. This is really, really interesting to me. So we deployed a test site with fully JavaScript rendered pages. So the source code in the HTML had no content and it's all hydrated using JavaScript. That content is getting indexed by Googlebot, ranking in Google. So we know that they've executed that JavaScript, and yet we didn't record the hit in our JavaScript Googlebot tracker. This has some serious implications for a range of bits of JavaScript SEO, whether it's regular indexing, whether it's enhancements to the page. I know many folks are including things like structured data, metadata alterations, those kinds of things with JavaScript. It's got implications for all of that. But specifically and most relevant to our approach, it has serious implications for running SEO tests using JavaScript enhancements on the page. And this is an area that we've been innovating in. We're fully compatible with client-side JavaScript libraries as we integrate. We mentioned recently a new technology we have called BrowserKit, which enables us to run tests compatible with Next.js, React, all of those kind of client-side frameworks. But obviously there are some folks who are trying to do this purely on the client side. And what's really interesting is, if you think about this from first principles, Google is trying to render the entire web, which is wild. And interestingly, I don't think it's well understood even within Google. We've had a couple of preliminary conversations with folks who are interested to hear our results because I think they don't necessarily know what to expect. But if you imagine this just from first principles, that's an incredible endeavor to try and undertake. It's going to require huge amounts of compute and it's going to be very, very expensive. So straight away, you would imagine that you would apply a number of heuristics to figure out, well, okay, are we going to render every page? Potentially not. And how are we going to apply those heuristics for which pages need rendering and which don't? Even for the pages we are going to render, how are we going to keep that as cheap and as light in compute terms as possible? And what it seems like from our early research, and again, we'll have more on this soon, is that there's some kind of sampling or tasting going on to say, does this page need rendering for a start? Does this particular script on this page need to execute in order to get the correct content to index? And if the answer is no, this script doesn't modify the page, don't drop it, don't execute it. And I think that, plenty more to do here, but the implications are potentially quite interesting. I think we're going to have quite an interesting research project coming out of this. The second thing we've been thinking about a lot is a cookieless future. On our SEO testing features side of things, aren't desperately reliant on cookies. We already have a cookieless version that we can deploy. But with the future of privacy regulations and this kind of, I think, unhealthy focus on cookies as a result, that it's going to be an increasing area of concern for many large websites. So that's an area of kind of active R&D where we're thinking about how do we operate fully compliant with how we get all the features that we want, even without any cookies. And one of the interesting things I just keep bringing up from time to time, because it seems many folks don't know this, is if you implement the integration between GA4 and a cookie consent banner, the accept or reject cookie pop-up that many sites have. There's an API integration where you can set the GA consent mode, it's called, which basically says, tells GA4 whether you've given consent for cookies and data tracking. Now, the interesting thing here, and it took me a while to debug this, is if you reject that permission, so in other words, you end up telling Google that the user has rejected the cookies, the event still fires. So if you're debugging, you'll still see in your JavaScript logs that the event fires and the data is passed to Google. Don't know whether they store it or not. I mean, that's not up to me, but they don't display it. So it gets passed to Google, but it doesn't show up in the Google Analytics interface or in the API or in the BigQuery integrations, those kind of things. And I think many folks don't realize this. And again, it's an area of R&D for us because we integrate with all the major analytics platforms and we need to understand how they all operate in different consent modes and figuring out what the best way is of measuring as well as possible. Even obviously we want to be fully privacy compliant and in line with users' requests. So that's another interesting one. Watch this space and see what else we have to talk about there. The final thing I want to talk about on the R&D side of things, I actually tweeted out earlier in the week, is that we've been working on improving our models, model sensitivity and accuracy. This is the forecasting model that underpins our test analysis. So whenever we run an SEO test, we are measuring the results by comparing what happened to the variant pages to our best forecast of what would have happened had we not made the change. And this is obviously one of the most important things to all of our customers. Really, everybody cares most about how many winning tests can I get, what percentage of tests are going to show as winners with statistical confidence. Now, actually, we help our customers with a much broader range of testing considerations than just how many winners are you going to get. So, you imagine a testing program. We're often brought in when folks are either spinning up an experimentation program generally across the business, or quite commonly when they're expanding an existing experimentation program into SEO and organic search. And what we're helping them do in that situation is kind of obviously get from the without testing model where everything's a question mark to step one, you run the tests. So you at least can run individual tests, you get those results, you find the winners and the losers and the inconclusive results. And of course, the first thing you do is you say, okay, well, let's at least cut out the negative tests, the things that we might have done otherwise that would have been a drag on our performance. This can help us get ahead of our competitors who don't know that was a bad idea. And that's part of the business case. Next part of the business case is that you get to say, well, we can also exclude inconclusive results. And that is primarily an efficiency and cost saving argument. So that basically means imagine only 25% of our tests are positive. That means that 3/4 of our tests, 3/4 of the effort that we would previously have demanded of our engineering and product team gets cut out. So we don't have to ask our product and engineering teams to maintain features that aren't bringing business benefits. So the benefits of a whole SEO testing program put all of this together, that you get to say, we can build the business case from the fact that we're getting ahead of competitors by avoiding drops, with efficiency in not having to maintain unnecessary features, and of course in exploring and searching for the winners, ultimately the uplifts. And it's kind of human nature that the uplifts are what folks really want. Of course, every time you press publish on a test, what everyone is hoping for is that graph that goes up and to the right strongly enough that we can be confident in the results. And so, yeah, so the winners, the statistical confidence and the statistical conclusions are by far the thing that the majority of our customers care about the most, which is what makes our recent breakthroughs all the more exciting. So we talked in the past, a couple of years ago, that we'd moved, a few years ago now, that we'd moved from causal impact to our own neural network model. This was basically a doubling of the sensitivity of our statistical analysis. When we first got started running SEO tests, we, like kind of standard in the industry, we're using the open source causal impact model, which is fine, can do a decent job. But if your priority is getting as many winning tests as possible, then you can do better on the sensitivity side. And so, yeah, a few years ago, I think 2019, we announced that we'd moved to a neural network model, which was basically twice as sensitive, allowed us to detect uplifts half the size with the same level of statistical confidence. So with that in mind, we have our best model to date, our best neural network model so far, giving results. This is an example of an inconclusive test. So this is a test we ran where, although we have, we think the most likely outcome is that this was a good idea, there's still a fair amount of the confidence interval in the negative. And so this is the 95 and 90% confidence intervals. And so even at 90% confidence, this is not positive. So there's at least a 1 in 10, if not greater chance, based on this analysis, that this test could be neutral or worse, negative. So what we really want to do is narrow that confidence bar, get more, tighten the range of what we think the outcomes might be. We've had a couple of breakthroughs. So these are two new models that we have in testing right now that are going into production. And you can see that both of them have even the 95% confidence interval positive, because while the midpoint is similar, in other words, our best estimate hasn't changed of the uplift here, our confidence in that uplift has improved. And we're now confident at the 95% level, and even higher than that, that these are, in fact, winners. This is the benefit of improved analysis capability, is that we can call more winners, which is so crucial to so many experimentation programs. And so I just thought I'd show off some of the work of our data team. I can take no credit for this, but just to show off what they've been up to. So we basically took a sample set of a large number of old tests, of which our original model was able to, and remember that was already an enhancement on causal impact. Our original model was able to declare a statistical winner in this is about 13% of cases. And two new models beat that by significant margins. This is 18 or 19%. I think this is 24% of these tests. And these are huge breakthroughs. We then took the best of these, this global optimizer model, and threw a load more compute power at it, ton more server spend, and we're able to draw that up all the way to about 28%. So more than 2x improvement again on our previous best model, which is, I think, well, I'm certainly pretty excited. I know our existing customers are, and for hopefully if there are any folks out there who have been thinking how to improve their SEO experimentation program in a way that gets more statistical winners and gets more confidence in those winners, detects smaller uplifts, even those ones with statistical confidence, then get in touch. If you head over to searchpilot.com/live, not only are there customer success stories, information about how SEO testing works and what it is, the chance to sign up to our SEO test result case study newsletter, but also, crucially, the demo form, where if you throw in a request there, we'll get in touch so that we can have a conversation about how you can bring all this technology to your SEO testing program. In the meantime, hit me up on Twitter or LinkedIn. I'm at Will Critchlow in both places. These live streams go out on my Twitter and my LinkedIn, as well as the SearchPilot YouTube channel. Most Tuesdays, typically at this kind of time. So late afternoon UK time, 11:15 or so in the morning, East Coast US, 8:15 a.m. West Coast. And if you, I'll tweet the links, but you can sign up to hear about it by email as well. Look forward to speaking to you again next week. Take it easy.